Hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of A Rebel Without Applause. Coming to you, as I always do, from my little nutshell of infinite space right here in the Wood of the Holly, under the sign in the land of law. And today I've got two incredibly special guests. I've been super excited to get them here to talk about something that I consider extremely important and timely. With me on the other side of the digital divide from the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota is Chief Henry Red Cloud and his son, John Red Cloud, both coming to me through this miracle of Zoom, but they are ancestors to a person I consider one of the greatest Americans of all time and one of the greatest and most important warriors in American history. You could easily include him amongst the likes of Washington and Grant and Patton and Eisenhower. And that's Chief Red Cloud, who successfully defeated the U.S. Army in the Red Cloud War along the Bozeman Trail, and not only excelled as a warrior, but also as a unifier and a diplomat, and secured the Treaty of Laramie in 1868, which was subsequently violated with the discovery of gold, and that precipitated another war. But I want to talk about that and how those events seem to collide with the present. And a grand welcome, I want to get the words right, to Mahbia Luta, coming to me near the sacred area of Paha Sapa. John and Henry Red Cloud, welcome to A Rebel Without Applause. How are you guys?
Doing great. Thank you, Bill. It's great to be sharing with you and coming from the territory of the Ocheti Ishakoin, the 7 council fires of the greater Lakota Nakota Dakota Nation.
And John, how are you doing today?
On unceded Lakota lands, Bill. So it always feels good to be back home and know that was very poignant fact, but unceded, very, very, very true historical fact.
So when we talk about those lands and the Lakota story, and I guess amongst the 7 sub-tribes within the Lakota umbrella, Red Cloud was amongst the Oglala. Is that correct? And I guess you guys still are. Is that correct as well?
Yeah, he was. He was part of the Oglala band within the 7 council fires. Within the Oglala band, there's Teoshpayes. So there was 7 Teoshpayes that represent the Oglala band. And we happen, both, John and I, our father, grandfather, great-grandfather, we all come from the bad face band of the Oglalas. Some say the ugly face.
Well, the words aren't always true, because what I'm looking at is very handsome across this digital divide. I don't see anything ugly at all. I see something.
There's context, but there's context, Bill, because the way that this name came about was, as you're well aware, whenever the native folks made contact with the Europeans, there was a number of cross-pollination, sometimes not so good, but in this case, it was smallpox. And it kind of beset the people, and they had the pock marks on their face, and they were kind of that's the Ite Shicha band because of that characteristic, and that's how that kind of came about. So that's the origin around that.
You touch on something. I did a podcast with this guy named Dan Flores, and one of the things that's not really talked about is the absolute devastation that disease what it did across this American continent, really within a generation or two of first contact. So much of what these white settlers, when they encountered, these Aboriginal people, these were in many ways remnant populations that had been decimated by disease, which I think left them in a way more vulnerable than they might otherwise have been.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
So when we talk about this incredible ancestor, Red Cloud, who succeeded as a military leader famously defeats the U.S. Army at their own game along the Bozeman Trail, comes to a tragic climax for the U.S. Army at the Fetterman Massacre. What is it? The Battle of 100 Hands.
Which happened just last month, or December 20th, I think that was.
Yep,
that
that's right.
battle.
Oh, right, the anniversary of it.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I get that confused because Little Bighorn was in the summer, but this was in the dead of winter. And one thing I would love for you guys to talk about, but one of the accomplishments that Red Cloud seemingly was able to do, from what I read, was as a unifier of many tribes to unite against, this incursion, because that wasn't always the case. Most of these tribes operated individually with all kinds of rivalries amongst themselves. I think as a facilitator and a negotiator and a realist, there's something to be taken from Chief Red Cloud. I'd love for you guys to talk about it.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Bill. Yeah. Grandfather La, I would say he was a spokesman not only for the Bad Face band, but the Oglalas appointed him head chief, and he had the magic, or he had this talent to bring people together, no matter if it was rivals, and that the way that he talked and explained. If there wasn't unity at this time, then drastic things were going to happen, not only for the Oglalas, but all the nations across the Northern Plains. And he articulated in such a way that all these tribes want to join forces. Our allies at that time, and continue to be our allies, is the Northern Cheyenne, the Cheyenne Nation, as well as the Arapaho. We're pretty related, pretty close to one another. So anyway, he had that voice. He had this where he just brought hundreds of people together. The very first treaty that they wanted to negotiate, they wanted to talk about a treaty. And this was right after the 1851, leading up to 1868. So they wanted to meet with some of the tribes here. So they came to a place called Crawford, Nebraska. It's now right outside of Crawford is Fort Robertson.
Okay.
So just, I'm going to say 5 miles from there, there's a huge cottonwood tree. You can take 6 guys and wrap around that tree. That's how huge that tree was. So they decided that they're going to meet there. So the government officials wanting to set up, they came in with 100 military. They came in, escorted in. They set up their tables and that. Okay, waiting for the ancestors to show up. Clear blue sky and all. And all of a sudden they heard like thunder, rumbling and that. And so they started to look around, but there was no clouds, no nothing, no rain clouds, thunder clouds. And all of a sudden, there was like a couple thousand warriors rode up on them and just ran circles around that big cottonwood tree. That was the first ever, they call it the treaty tree. And it's still there. It has fallen over since, but it's still there and it's still marked. At that point, that was the first encounter, and they thought, oh, these guys, these natives, they could have easily took us out. They had 100 infantry there, plus the generals, whoever all they want and sent out to negotiate a treaty, and that really made them sweat to see that much warriors just come and just circle them several times and create a huge dust area before they settled in. And Munton came in, asked about what treaty, what is a treaty,
Mm-hmm. It seems like the white people had this conception, as we still do, of private property, and the tribal people looked at things communally. They didn't look at things individually, and I think that's a concept that we still see people wrestling with to this day. You know, this idea of the communal versus the private. I think there's much to learn from the communal. You know. And so the treaty you're talking about is the 1851 treaty. The 1868 Treaty of Laramie follows the conflict along the Bozeman Trail, and that treaty, because I want to just kind of give broad understanding to people watching this, was the treaty that really really guaranteed the sovereignty across a massive swath of territory, including the Powder River, Bahasapa, the Black Hills, and was an incredible diplomatic achievement, which was sadly violated. And I don't think people understand that. And you guys came to my attention through this, when I was watching this land back movement, was this attempt to kind of reclaim sovereignty. And that's a key word for me, and I think for you guys, sovereignty, whether it's energy sovereignty, which is Red Cloud Renewables, or the sovereignty over land. To me, that's the core of this question of like restorative justice. And you're talking to like a white guy here. What is the best way and most realistic path forward for some restorative justice to restore the integrity of this agreement? That's my big question.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Bill. Let me answer a little bit, and then I'll pass it over to John. So back in the day, when they start putting people on the greater Lakota Nation on areas called reservations. So they start, and then within that, they brought forth the 1890 Dawes Act.
Right.
And then at that time, Bill, they start putting a name to plots of land.
Right.
And the ancestors, their response was, why you putting my name there? We don't own the land, it's not ours. We're just here. We're just borrowing it from the future generations. And there's a grassroots movement that would like to begin back with the 1851 boundary treaty, which encompassed half of North Dakota, half of South Dakota, the eastern bank of the Missouri, 5 miles east of the bank. So the waters included, goes down to the North Platte. Then the North Platte swings down, forks, and then swings down into Colorado. So that's the line that it follows up Colorado, and then over 3/4 of Wyoming going north up to the Yellowstone, and that all coming back up around there, and then coming back up to into Montana, and then cutting across back into North Dakota. 56 million acres was see that. We want to keep in mind now that treaties are the supreme law of the land. They when they sit down, they only make treaties with other nations, and we were considered as a nation. So they want to initiate it, the boundary treaty. The 1868 treaty was the peace treaty. Now, I want to say this, that both treaties were initiated by the federal government. It wasn't no treaty that the ancestors came up with. No, it was initiated. They wanted the peace treaty. They were getting their ass whipped. It didn't look so good. It didn't look good.
Right, and the treaty is also ratified by the U.S. Senate, so it goes through a very a big political gauntlet just to be ratified, and these were ratified treaties. I don't know to what degree the 1868 treaty modifies the previous treaty, But this is something, it seemed at that moment that the Lakota peoples were at their almost imperial apex of territory, because as I understood it, they really kind of migrated out of the Minnesota forest into the plains with horses, and the economy changes really around Buffalo.
Yeah. So, getting back to what I was saying earlier, just, previously. So Grandpa, they sent word out. All the different tribes come in, look at this peace treaty. We want peace. Grandpa and his warriors, Crazy Horse, all of the ones. Crazy Horse, he comes from the Oglalas. He sent word back over to Fort Laramie, and he said he doesn't want to talk treaty at all. He doesn't want to talk peace treaty until the 3 forts along the Bozeman Trail, where he and his warriors burnt it to the ground. And they said, we'll come in when we have the charcoal on the soles of our moccasins. So in the year of 1868, when the treaty started, tribes came in April 29th of 1868. The different Lakota tribes came in. They went and signed on, and they were staying at the fort there, Fort Laramie. And on November 6th of 1868, Grandpa and his Oglalas, they came in. So all the others, they looked over and that, and sure enough, their moccasins were tainted with charcoal. Then they came in to talk, treaty, peace treaty. They shut the Bozeman Trail down. They shut it down. And then they sat down at the negotiating table. Grandpa, the Oglalas, we were the last ones to even sign on to the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty. Thank you, Bill.
Hey there, friends, countrymen, and subscribers. I got a quick offer for you. After many years doing this, I finally have a promotional partner, and the company is Cozy Earth. They make all manner of bamboo bedding, including duvets and sheets and pillowcases. It's really cool. I've been using this stuff myself, and it's very comfortable, and I'm able to offer you till March a 41% discount on any and all purchases done through that Cozy Earth website. After that, it goes down to 20%. Either way, it's a great value and it's really cool stuff. All you got to do is type in the promo code REBEL and you'll get those discounts. So check it out if you get a chance. You can support Sound Sleep and me. I appreciate it. Dig it, Daddy-O. It's an incredible story because I don't think people understand what a massive accomplishment that was, just in terms of military strategy, but also diplomatic savvy. And of course, the tragedy was gold, because within a few years, they find gold in the Black Hills. I think it's Custer gets in there and they find it, and it just releases a tsunami of humanity into those areas. And even if General Grant or President Grant had willingly defended those treaties, I don't know if there was anything they could have done to stop this complete tsunami of just people crashing into this region to get gold. And when I think about the billions of dollars in wealth that was extracted from that area, and the settlement that the Supreme Court offered was just the smallest, unbelievable fraction. I think even the Hearst fortune was largely extracted out of the Black Hills.
There was over 1 billion ounces of gold extracted out of there, as well as the gold, timber. A lot of timber was, a lot of resources. Currently, they're trying to mine lithium and do all this other stuff too. So they're trying to do a lot of stuff up there, and there's the grassroots movement that is here and saying no, you can't do that.
So there was an award. The Supreme Court recognized this, and as I understand it, it was in 1980. It was like 100 million.
1980, yeah.
Yeah, which today would be worth upwards of, I don't even know what that amount would be in the billions to be sure. And yet, you guys don't want that. You want the land. Two questions. Is that a unanimous sort of feeling amongst your tribal community?
For my generation, yes. And for the generation before me, yes. And so I'll let John talk on behalf of his generation.
Yeah, yeah. There's gold in them thar hills. So this was a headline blasted across the major papers. Next thing you know, pioneers flooding, running west, couldn't get out of each other's way. They heard about these things, and the Lakota people, they seen this yellow metal here and there around the Black Hills. Sure, it's in the streams. Yeah, you see it, but never before did they see this reaction. You see a settler out there, he finds a nugget of gold. He's hooting and hollering, throwing his hat around and dancing a jig and just, like, what is going on with this guy? Like he went crazy. And it was because of this yellow piece of metal. This couldn't, his eyes got big, popped out of his head. He's hooting and hollering, slapping each other on the back. And like, what is this? We've seen this metal all the time. And these guys are clearly like going crazy over it. So this whole, and you talk about Custer, Bill, scientific expedition. That's what the government called it. Oh, we're going to conduct a scientific. They were going to go into the Black Hills. No, they were really looking for gold. They needed Custer to confirm it. Good old long hair, Yeah. So now that this valuation has been placed on, and that 1980 settlement, and we see these shirts, the Black Hills are not for sale. The latest generation, I think the younger folks. So my children, my dad's grandchildren, they are the seventh generation. And at one point, Chief Red Cloud, he asked when he was making these negotiations, part of his thought, his foresight was to say, I want, by the seventh generation for me, I would like the Lakota children to read the English language, write the English language, speak the English language, understand it. See, because he had gotten swindled, and that was not a good feeling. So he knew there has to be we have to coexist in some kind of way with these white people. Now, going back to your restorative justice question, Bill, this is my take on it. My opinion, and I studied a little bit of history, went to college, and I was a high school history teacher, but manifest destiny. This was the entire undoing. Anything, treaties, all that stuff was laid waste there because the Europeans folks were told, they're given a divine directive. You will populate this land from coast to coast. It don't matter who's in your way, what people, they don't know any better. They're simple-minded savages. They don't understand the bounty that they can take advantage of. Tame the wild, that sort of thing. So manifest destiny. Once people, Christians in particular, latched onto that, it was okay. It was okay to go and set the people aside. I don't know if you ever seen that very famous painting. I forget the artist, Bill, but it's called American Progress. It's Lady Liberty. She's got a torch and she's oversized, trampling over the prairies. She's holding a telegraph line, poles and telegraph lines, and there's a railroad at her feet. And there are in the background, there's small native peoples that are kind of being corralled up, and there's pioneer wagon trains that are going through. It's a very descriptive painting. And I think today's generation, they're looking at that settlement. I mean, giving it a revisit. I'm of the mindset that this is not something that is going to be for sale. But I think the latest folks are okay. What is that? Let's do some mathematics here. We're dividing, and I'm not sure. I hope that doesn't gain any traction. But for the restorative justice side of it, if at some point folks, and I know this is several generations now, Bill, but going back and saying, using our faith to basically decimate a people and a population, maybe that wasn't the right thing to do. And there's no way of, ever amending it or reparations, any of these other things. I think those are really not realistic. So this is my my take on the restorative justice. Going back to the gold. I mean, that's basically that was it. And this goes back years. I mean, there's gold. The Aztecs had gold, and for some reason, whatever that value was, it was placed, and it's worldwide. Like right now, gold is like over $5,000 an ounce.
To what extent does all the drama with the PVP, I call him the PVP, Putin's vice president, this outer borough bully, by the way, who showed up in his previous administration in front of the Black Hills to kind of taunt, I think, your people. To what extent does all that drama really penetrate the reservation or Pine Ridge in these places, or do you guys feel like you're not part of it?
It's a very good question. I know people in South Dakota generally, this is MAGA country, Bill, ruby red, South Dakota. Pretty much always has been, likely always will be. There's ranching, there's agricultural interests here. In the state of South Dakota, there are roughly 600,000 people. Of those, about, like maybe 10% or so Native American. And if you're not a part of, if you're not on the reservation, chances are there's only two big cities, Rapid City and Sioux Falls. And there's a smattering of small towns all the way through. Even our capital is pretty small, Pierce, South Dakota. Blink and you'll miss it if you're driving through it.
Right.
But most people, I saw a study one time, and they showed Oglala, Lakota County had this remarkable attribute of being the most homogeneous county from a political identification standpoint, like 99% Democrat. People here identify overwhelmingly. I mean, and then you step right next door, Fall River County, Pennington County, Bennett County, all of a sudden it's heavy Republican. I mean, so this is an interesting part of our people here. And people have said, don't you think that big government and these things, stronger defense, these conventional, conservative tenets, don't you think those would gain traction in the kind of like the reservation area? But it's hard to say whenever, people are struggling with median household incomes, $25,000, $30,000. I mean, this is some of the realities there's about 35,000 people on the reservation here, about 2.8 million acres of land. So land rich. There's two economies. Money economy, which we all know very well, but there's a land economy. Bill, a lot of people, like my dad talked about, whenever this Dawes Allotment Act came about, there's a lot of fractionated heirship interests in land. They've been consolidated. And it's been about a generation or two since the BIA done away with that. So there's no more, if there was no will in place, which most Lakota people did not go through, put together an instrument like a will. So their children, 5 or 6, would then fractionate the land and so on and so forth. So there's people who have 1/64th interest in, 20 acres. So they did away with that. But there's this, and there's a very circuitous way to consolidate land. But one has to be willing to go through the paperwork, go to the BIA office, stay at the BIA office, make calls, send emails, follow up. That's the only way. So this land economy, I don't think there are enough Lakota people participating in it, understand it, who have the wherewithal and willingness to see that process through. It took almost a year for me to get a land lease, residential land lease, 2.5 acres from the tribe. Any tribal member can do it. You just have to see it through, stay on them. It took 11 months. So these are the two economies, and the one that's really valuable from a legacy standpoint is the land economy. And not enough people understand how valuable that is and the process, or feel it worthy to pursue, because it's not the immediate, I can do something with my land and put fuel in my car or put food on the table or whatever, put some food in the fridge. So it's different.
I think people don't really understand the Dawes Act and how catastrophic it was for Native people's lands, because it allowed for privatization and selling, and it diminished these lands. And it all, to me, cuts to this idea of the collective versus the individual and private property and sort of the ravages of capitalism. I feel like, you guys have experienced in a way that, I haven't. I've lived this urban life as an actor and a comedian. But one of the things that hit me, you know, in the news lately was been a lot of talk about Greenland and the desire of the PvP to acquire this swath of territory. And most of the news talks about it as, well, this violates the European NATO agreements and our relationships with our European allies. And it certainly does. But there's another story there that this is another attempted takeover of native people's lands. I mean, Greenland is like, I don't know the numbers, but it's like 95% Inuit. These are what we call Eskimo peoples, I guess. Right. They've been, you know, on this land for forever. They've adapted to a very harsh environment and made it work for themselves. So when I look at this Greenland thing, I think of the Lakota situation. I go, wait, this is the same.
We were at a clean energy conference, Bill. I'm glad you brought this up. And this person, I think he was a non-native guy. He was looking to kind of get to know some folks, and he got a chance to speak, and he talked about his portfolio and his firm. And he brought up this Greenland idea. What a great idea is, how great to have them as clients. So one of the people, he was a tribal leader, I can't remember his name, but he took the mic there and said, anybody have any questions? Sure. You grab the mic. You say, so you're telling us here, we're a bunch of tribal people, what a great idea it is to go and what's happening in Greenland right now. And the guy backpedaled, oh no, of course not. That's not what I'm saying at all. But the guy, I mean, you could hear a pin drop as soon as the guy asked a question, like, whoa. So he put the guy on the spot on the stage. You know, he was saying, what a great portfolio this be, how we can develop all this stuff and extract all these, you know what I mean? And the guy put him in his place. And I think he didn't realize who he was amongst there at that moment. But yeah.
One of the things that really fascinated me about Red Cloud is, you know, after these treaties were signed and he begins his life, I guess what it was called the Red Cloud Agency, but then it's the Pine Ridge Reservation, is he made many trips, or a number of trips, to Washington. And we saw, I think it was Ulysses S. Grant. He spoke at Cooper Union Hall. And I think I wanted to just maybe dispel a stereotype that, you know, white people have, that he wasn't a realist. I feel like he was trying to communicate with the larger world beyond the tribes, that he was a realist and that he was actually different in certain ways than, let's say, Sitting Bull was, who ended up continuing this fight for another, I guess, let's see, through at least 1876, and doesn't even return to the reservation until the 1880s. And I just felt like this is an incredibly sophisticated and realistic person. I don't think it's fully appreciated. You know, there's a great picture with him with Othniel Marsh, who was an important paleontologist who was digging up dinosaur bones in these areas. And he visits him in Yale. And this picture, to me, it bespeaks to a very deep kind of wisdom and humanity. And I don't know if that's fully understood, because he was reaching out and trying to find accommodation with these new neighbors that weren't going away.
Warrior statesman.
Yeah.
That's what he embodied. Warrior statesman, Bill. And I think you're right. Like one thing you just said was, eventually at some point Sitting Bull did go to the reservation. If you remember the story about Crazy Horse, he ran and took his band but he was running, always running from one place to the next, scarce on food, always has looking over his shoulder. But eventually he too was coming back to Fort Robinson. He had finally, like, I can't do this anymore, you know, and it took them at the end. Remember, they were both killed, and the story is by Native people. You know, they were stabbed in the back. Literally,
right.
Figuratively. Yep.
Sitting Bull, of course, as a reaction to the ghost dance situation, and that leads to Wounded Knee shortly afterward. The history is tragic, but you guys seem to be offering a very positive answer, you know, in terms of what your business is, and another kind of response to this word sovereignty in terms of renewable energy. And I wanted you guys to talk about that too. You guys are still here. You guys,
Yeah,
you're here, and you're a descendant, and
Yeah.
you can. I don't know who my ancestors are. I don't know. I mean, I know my grandfather, and then it's all a mystery to me. It's all cloudy. But you guys have that in a way that I don't, and you're still here, and you're still in the present and looking to the future. So I want to talk about that because it's very empowering and it's hopeful to me.
Sure. Thank you, Bill. I just want to say that we, as the Northern Plains Lakota people, we've been through life-changing things. Our way of life was, taken from us. Our language, our ceremonies were being stripped. Everything that we held near and dear to us were being stripped away. But we kept secretly practicing our ceremony, song, dance, all of these ceremonies that we, carry. Our language was, forbidden to speak, and that, and then our life changed, but we're still here 160 plus years later. Everything that changed for us, we as indigenous people, not only us, but throughout the country, are pretty resilient. They'll adapt to it. They'll survive. Grandfather, he made his first journey out to the East Coast. He made his first journey out there, and it took him 7 days to get there by train. And he left, and a couple days later, he is still traveling. And by then, he was probably coming through Chicago and coming through areas like that, Cleveland, Ohio, and then coming into the D.C. area. And then meeting at that time, he met with the president, went into the White House, sat down there, met with him on the issue of treaty obligation. And each time he returned there, it was always about the treaty obligation. He became a diplomat at the time there, and really talking, standing for the treaty, the way of life. That's why they went and took up arms to protect their way of life, protect their people, and here we are. We're still here. Here we are in the 21st century now. We still have our language, our culture, our ceremony, our song, our dance, our way of life here in the 21st century. Being able to see the ancestors come through all these different phases and then coming out strong, that's what we're doing here at Red Cloud Renewable. We're taking what our ancestors thought and led and visioned and brought forward, merging it with our ceremony, culture, song, dance, language, merging these together in this 21st century, deploying this new breed of warriors. We call them solar warriors. We give them the technical support on how to install solar, how to design a system, how to install it. Today, Red Cloud Renewable, we celebrated our 10th anniversary as a 501c3. Prior to that, 1997, when I got started, Bill, in solar, I got started way back then and worked with different organizations, foundations, and that, and was winged underneath them, underneath their 501c3, and raise money to do the things that we're doing. Then now we're on our own, so we're developing this new breed of warriors for this new economy, and our thing here is to see one of the First Nation communities, 575 federally recognized tribes today. We're helping them to reach energy independence, energy sovereignty. With that, our hope, our dream, our vision is to see one of these tribes become energy independent before mainstream America. We can do it. We got treaties, we got laws. The state side, they have their laws and that, but we have our own laws too. We got our own laws. There's two different, you know, we have our own, jurisdictional court laws there, tribal council. We got all this. It's totally, different. So we came a long ways. I'm just going to go ahead and pass it on over to John. Thank you, Bill.
Bill, this is what we talked about, the high unemployment rates that are on reservations amongst a lot of indigenous communities, um, alcoholism, violence, poverty, social ills. I'm sure there's things like that also in the greater Los Angeles area. I've
Down
been
the
through
street, down the street.
been to Skid Row there. I saw Skid Row, like, wow, that is a huge, massive population. But for what we're trying to do is, in order for folks to use their resources, which they've worked sometimes a lifetime to accumulate, and they made smart investments to get to where they are, we like to see our work alongside us and with us, invest in our community. So we're creating a way, and we're going to come out with some documents here about how a person or a family can invest in this community here. And here's your return on investment by the tax that's going to be increased, the employment wages. And for us, Bill, it comes down to, you know, don't give us a fish, like give us some fishing poles and we'll get this figured out. But give us a chance. That's what it comes down to. There are 2 million Native American people across the land, coast to coast, Florida and Alaska. Give us a chance. Level the playing field a little bit, and things are going to be okay. We can find our way, and we certainly will. So this is just our way of trying to provide that opportunity for folks in a culturally relevant atmosphere. The Red Cloud Renewable Energy Center on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, first of a kind, one of a kind, fully functional renewable energy training center on the Indian Reservation. Those are great accolades, but after a while, we'd like to see those other tribes take the mantle. And part of our reality here, Bill, is, and we use this, but if we can do it in Pine Ridge with the realities here, you can sure do it in your part of the country. So this is some of the strengths.
Wouldn't be the first lessons that the larger white population learned from our tribal neighbors. Even some of our foundations of this thing we call democracy was borrowed from tribal councils and representative government. It wasn't a complete European creation. So when you talk about renewable energy, one of the things that I'm curious, is that solar panels? Is it retrofitting and insulation? It's a whole, I guess, symphony of things. I'm guessing.
This is true. This is true.
Yeah. What we have going here, Bill, we're just started to start manufacturing these solar canopies. We had the first one in the whole entire nation. We installed it here and we plugged it into an outlet. These canopies, they're being manufactured here at Ground Zero on a Pine Ridge, home of the Tihangtuan Oglala Lakota Nation.
And so as a 501c, that means you're able to, people can make donations, and there's
Yes.
there's a portal to be supportive. And one of the things in terms of restoration and sovereignty that's really interested me is the restoration of the prairie, of the grasslands, of the buffalo.
Yep.
And there's some very hopeful stories about buffalo being kind of restored to the grasslands.
Yeah, we're seeing that within the Northern Plain tribes.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about buffalo grass, Bill, there's a huge movement just to buy the seed, to replant it. This little seed, little buffalo grass seed, just a tiny thing. There's a huge market for it. Ranchers are wanting to buy it and reseed the area with the natural buffalo grass.
So you've seen some of that, I hope, progress. I hope.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we sure enough did. We helped bring buffalo back to the res here, in fact. So yeah, I see it. Families are starting to unite and starting to put their lands together and saying, okay, we can do something. Let's bring the sacred buffalo Tchatchanka back.
Cobbling together this sort of jigsaw puzzle of land into larger communal prairie spaces for the buffalo is seemingly, I guess, what you're describing.
Using science too, using science. But I've heard, and it took a scientist, ecologist, to say, whenever the buffalo were taken away and decimated, you see these piles, mountains of skulls, right?
No.
So what was happening was they realized that certain portions of the ecosystem were now being diminished. They found that the very specific clovature of the buffalo was creating these pairing up, and it was creating this ecosystem to allow for regenerative growth for like the sage grouse, just because of the way that their hoof was pointed, how it would dig into the earth, like aerating naturally. And buffalo, of course, are not like, so you'll have a number of regular cows, and our ancestors used to call them slow elk. But the cow will stand, in a field of snow, and if you don't give them a tank heater, they're going to die of dehydration. See, they're not very smart. But the buffalo will eat the snow. Hey, that's water. I'm not going to dehydrate if I'm surrounded by snow. These animals are resilient and adaptive, and we learn from them. But it did take an ecologist to say, hey, wait a minute, those buffaloes, the way that their hooves are working were actually advantageous for our ecosystem. So yes, that's what you're seeing today.
When I think about in my own imagination, and I've been in the trying to make some movies and stuff, and I love to surf. I'm a surfer, and I'm out there on the ocean, and it's so free, and I'm catching waves, which are a natural phenomena. And the world that Red Cloud and Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull was born into, with just an ocean of space and animals and elk and buffalo and hunting, and the freedom that they must have felt. I can only imagine what a glorious existence that had to have been. How fucking fun and joyous, and to lose that in their lifetime. It's at once like incredibly glorious and tragic at the same time, what they experienced in their lifetime. But it's not hopeless. You guys are still here, and I appreciate what you're doing, and you're teaching me something. And damn, I hope you can get those Black Hills back, because I was in Deadwood, and it's just a shitty tourist trap. Who cares? Or at least you can get the rents from those places. You start collecting some lease money on those idiots. I love the fly fish too. I love the rivers, and I forget, just west of the Black Hills on the Wyoming side, I camped out for a few days, and there's a beautiful winding river and these bluffs. Wish I could remember the name. It was just on the very eastern edge of the Wyoming border, with the Black Hills were right there. And I just camped there next to my car for a few days and fly fished all by myself.
Wow.
It's just like, these people had it great.
That's why they did what they did, to protect the earth, protect all the relatives, all the sacred beings within, the buffalo, everybody. That's why, as they laid there on their bellies up on the hilltops and watched all these people coming across on wagons and devastating the earth, they decided that they have to take up arms. If they don't, then the earth was going to be destroyed. The human, the animal life was all going to be destroyed. The ecosystem was going to be destroyed. So they took up arms for the future generations. They went and took it, and you gotta keep in mind that the ancestors, all they had was spears, tomahawks, and bow and arrows. Today the United States military watched how the Northern Plains, the Lakota people, attack them. They use those same tactics on every time they go to war. They use the Lakota tactics, and those tactics build that way of surrounding, the way of protecting, and that all came from the buffalo. The Lakota people lived in harmony, balance, watched the buffalo and watched how they protected and how they attacked. They attacked, retreated, attacked, retreated. All of this comes from the sacred hoop of life. That's where all of this is come. Maybe that's why we survived all this way. Having the vision, having that, being able to understand that Chungleshka Wakan, the sacred hoop of life, where there's no ending and no beginning, Bill. And they were able to stay within that realm spiritually, mentally, physically, is why we went and survived all of these years. Here we are in the 21st century, utilizing what we know, what we understand in the spiritual, mental, ceremonial. We're combining that with Red Cloud Renewable and bringing forth that. We have our students are native, our instructors are native. We're having a great time here. We're honoring the old way while creating these breed of solar warriors for the next 7 generations. This, just as our ancestors set forth for us. Me being the 5th, John the 6th, his, children the 7th. We always got to move. We always got to think 7 generations ahead.
And maybe just, I'm looking at this from where I sit. One of the lessons of Red Cloud is he was a realist. I don't feel like he was animated towards the hate of white people. He actually wanted the benefits of whatever their society could give them. But he was a realist, and he adapted over the course of his life, and he lived a long life. He was born in the 1820s. I believe he died in 1910 or somewhere in that area.
1909.
1909. Yeah. So that's 20th century. He saw airplanes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He saw airplanes, railways.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I so appreciate that you guys took the time to share with me this story, and I have a little series called Descendants and Ancestors, and you guys are very distinguished descendants of a monumentally important ancestor. And it seems to me like you're carrying that torch. And I'm hopeful that, as the political environment changes, there might be some path towards restorative justice with respect to this 1868 Treaty of Laramie. I think there's space for a happier outcome. So I just want to thank you guys for this.
Yeah.
You guys were harder to nail down than actually Red Cloud himself, on the prairie.
Yeah.
I was chasing you. I couldn't find you, but I'm glad I did.
So yeah, we're all about land back.
Land back. Yeah.
Land back.
That's right.
Right. And we're not so interested in the billions that are there.
No.
I mean, is this a possibility to take the money to buy the land back? Is that a possible outcome?
I don't think they'd sell it, right? All them people, they're holding on to them deeds. Their life depends on it. They won't sell. I guess everything has a price, I suppose, but there's a lot of millions of acres, that could be commandeered back, and a lot of different interests up there now. So, but come out to the Black Hills, Bill. I don't know when you're coming out, but come see what we're doing out here in Pine Ridge.
I will. If I got an invitation, I'm going to make it out there. Not in December, because I saw what happened to Fetterman. I don't want to be there in December. I like to be there in the warmer months. I got a friend, paleontologist named Stein, Bill Stein, and I was on a dino dig out there in Belfouche. I told your father
Okay.
and
Okay.
it was really cool. I got some bones right here next to me. So, you're actually in one of the most interesting areas on Earth in terms of not only the human drama that we talked about, but the geological and evolutionary drama, because you're really sitting on top of a lot of dinosaurs and creatures that predated all of humanity and roamed. I guess the Badlands is really the boundary of an inland ocean that was here at one time. So it's so interesting. So I just want to thank John and Henry. I'm pointing on my computer. Red Cloud for being here. I want to say the word, but you guys can say it. That's on your letterhead there.
Mitakuye Oyase.
Mitakuye Oyase. And that means we're all related.
Yes, we are.
As humanity, we are all recent arrivals here. So thank you guys so much. And to my audience out there, I would like to say this: Namaste, Shalom, and Aloha. By that I mean Namashaloha. Till next time.
Next time.
See you.